Today, I want to circle back a little bit on Eve Galaxy Conquest and teach kind of some of the fundamentals for people to understand. Because I like to teach a man to fish rather than just give people bit by bit instructions, I want to talk a little bit about how really fleets come together in Eve Galaxy Conquest. A fleet is kind of composed of three separate components. You have the ship, you have the pilots, and you have the squads. These are related to each other, and they go together to kind of control how things work. But we're going to look at these pieces one at a time. So, to begin with, we are going to look at our ships. Now, both ships and pilots have a lot of things in common, or at least their own version of the same thing. The first thing to point out when it comes to ships is you got to give up what you know about the ships when it comes to their relative power in EVE Online. That usually doesn't correspond too much in EVE Galaxy Conquest. And also things like the ship size. It's not like battleships are better than frigates. The Dramiel can be just good as the Caracal, or even could be better than the Bellicose, or some of the other epics, because one of the things that they do to justify this is to say, okay, well, if it's a frigate, then there's 5 of them per squad, whereas if it's a cruiser, there's only 3 per squad. If there's a battleship, there's only 1 per squad. This is not actually important information for you as a player. Just realize that they've kind of abstracted it to say, okay, well, like a legendary ship is a legendary ship, an epic ship is an epic ship. So look at those as indicators as to how powerful it is. Not like, oh, well, battleships are better, they have more power than frigates. That isn't necessarily true. Also, that doesn't necessarily mean that a battleship is slower than a frigate, right? Like this battleship has a data rate of 64, where this Algos has a data... Wait, no, that's not a good example. This Worm has a data rate of 59. So the Worm is slower than the Maelstrom. So you got to look at what the pieces are as far as in the game goes. Now, the very first thing about understanding the power levels is that unlocking a champion, unlocking a ship, unlocking a pilot by getting a copy of it is only the very beginning. You actually kind of don't want to use your ships that have like no yellow stars, and in order to upgrade a ship fully, you need to be able to upgrade its red stars, which involve strengthening which requires extra copies of that ship. So anytime that you get a ship or a pilot that you've already gotten, you instead get 20 tokens for it, a blueprint or a data sheet, I think it is, for a pilot. And those can be used to upgrade, to promote, or to strengthen that ship or pilot, giving you red stars. Now, the amount that is required as you level up goes up. A good rule of thumb is that the break-even, or like the big point of turning point for power, is 3 red stars, both for pilots and for ships. But really, each red star, as far as ships go, each red stars unlocks extra capabilities of their modules. So like this ship has 4 modules and 3 red stars. So you can see the combat drones here, how it has a little Tech 2 in the upper left-hand corner. And so does the neutralizing pulse projector and the annihilation beam. Well, the weakness scanner doesn't have a little Tech 2 next to it, because I only have 3 red stars and not a 4th red star, right? If I had 4, the 4th red star would unlock that last weakness, that last Tech 2. And it isn't actually Tech 2. If you look at the actual item itself, what you're unlocking here is this mutaplasmid effect. So the fact that I have this red star here, you can see that the default is that this is a barrage skill, which I believe barrage is the same as an assault weapon. This deals 1 extra attack to the target after initiating direct fire. The direct fire is the normal attack for the turn, and it has a damage rate. But then it has a mutaplasmid effect of deal more damage if the target fleet has lost more than 50% of the ship's squads, influenced by the number of lost ship squads, at most 50% increased damage. What that means is that because this is at the 3rd red star, if I'm hitting a target that has less than 50% of its health left, this thing does 50% additional damage. Reading these abilities and what they do is part of the key point to understanding the game. Like, to being decent at the game. Danny helpfully linked this page, which is the Eve Galaxy Conquest keywords. There is no in-game list of all keywords, so I decided to make one. So with this page, which she linked, if you go there, you'll find every keyword that is said in the game. So like, for instance, here it says combat drone. I can click on combat drone, and it says combat drone inflicts direct damage to a random enemy wing each turn and lowers its armor. So I can go back to browse and see combat drone, and then that's what it does. And then I also posted which ship and or pilot has that keyword, just in case, like, oh, I need to find somebody with decoder error. Well, here's all the characters with decoder error, right? So that's a tool, that's a resource for you. I should probably link, I'm going to put it in the comments too, or in the description down below. If you're watching this not live and it's not down there, yell at me, so then I put it down there. So a ship will have a number of modules based on its rarity, right? So if we go down here and we see this green ship, the Emperor, the Corvette, has only one ability, right? It's just unlocked by default. Boom, Gatling Pulse Laser. Deals kinetic damage to a single enemy wing. Now we can already look at this and see, like, okay, well, this is an active ability, which just makes it kind of a normal ability. And it has a trigger chance of 50%. So that means that during the Imperator's turn, it will initiate its normal direct fire, and then 50% of the time, it will also use this ability. Okay? That's all that means. And everything is either a passive or there's a trigger chance. And the trigger chance is just the chance that it happens in any given turn, or when it's supposed to be triggered. Blues have two different abilities. So in this case, we have the Nosferatu Energy Beam, which deals damage with a mutaplasmid effect of whenever it deals damage, restores 10% hit points to the number of damage dealt. So literally a lifesteal-like effect. And then it also has the Disillusion Array, which deals damage with the mutaplasmid effect of when it does deal damage, it has a 50% chance to inflict the target with a repair disabled, which basically means that it can't be healed for one turn each time it deals damage. So this thing has a 45% chance to trigger. So on any given turn, it has a 45% chance to hit. And if it does hit, then it has a 50% chance of applying this repair disabled. So on any given turn, you have approximately about 23% chance of applying repair disabled on any given turn just from the Kruger itself. Epics have 3 modules to unlock. You get one of them for free. And here's the critical thing. Let's go to the incursus here. This is how kind of it starts out. Now, obviously, I already have red stars, but I haven't unlocked its modules yet. I can look at the modules, but I can't put anything in it. And if I want to activate it, I have to pay 40 tokens, purple tokens, in order to unlock it. Now, these tokens, there's 2 different kinds. There's these generic ones that you get for doing missions and other rewards. But then, remember how I said every time you unlock a duplicate, you get 20 of their little tokens? You can see that these are tokens for other champions and things that I have. So, you know, I've opened a duplicate Algos right now, and so I have 10 extra Algoses. However, if I go look at the Algos, I'd really like to finish his red stars, and in order to promote it, I need 5 more Algoses to even promote it 1 more bit of a red star, and I need 4 more bits to finish my 4th red star. So I don't want to use these 10 blueprints on just unlocking things, even though I really want to be able to unlock things. So here's part of the concern. Now, when it comes to permanent progress, the things that stay in between seasons is these red stars and these unlocked modules. Not what levels you put into them, but the fact that you have unlocked them. So both of the pieces that require these doodads to unlock in one way or another are the things that stay in between seasons. Now, once they are unlocked, like in this Dramiel, you can see I can continue to level them up. You know, it's not enough to just unlock them. They have 15 levels each, and each level costs ISK to level them up. This gets completely reset each expansion. So you get to keep the red stars, you get to keep what modules are unlocked, but you do not get to keep anything that you bought with your ISK, okay? In order for a ship to be fully usable, it's not just good enough to have it, right? Like this Caracal, actually, a better example. Nope. This Catalyst is a very good ship. It's a legendary ship, but I can't really bring it to bear. If I put a pilot in it right now, it would kind of suck. You can see it has an overall power on this side of 384, whereas, like, we could go down and look at this Bellicose. The Bellicose is a 687. So you're telling me this Epic is almost twice as powerful as this Legendary? Well, not twice as powerful, but 2/3, one, whatever. Yes, it is. And the reason why is because this ship has nothing unlocked. It's like, you know, you could have the best ship in the game, but if you have it half fit and you can't turn on half the modules, then it's going to be toast. In order to be able to unlock this stuff, and this is the biggest problem, here's the biggest secret. Legendaries, especially as a newer player, especially as a free-to-play player, legendaries are kind of trap, okay? As a newer player, as a free-to-play player, the good epics that you have are probably going to be stronger than your legendaries. And even if you have, like, you will probably have enough resources to power up most of your epics pretty broadly, but legendary resources are really not a commodity. What's the word? A premium. Whatever. They're rarer. So, and you need more of them. Like, so if I wanted to unlock this module, I could unlock it with purples. That's great. And I can unlock it with 40 purples. That's fine. And then this one, though, oh, I can't unlock it until I have the other one. Hold on. Do I have any one where... Either way, if I skip to the fourth one, you'll see that the fourth one requires 40 legendary tokens. And so, you know, this either has to be a duplicate legendary that I got, which could have gone to promoting them, or, you know, legendary tokens, which are at a premium. So there's not enough of them to do everything you want with them. So you got to pick and choose which ships you unlock, right? That initial Vexor is strong, but I have a Breacher and Stratios that are potentially better. Exactly. If you have invested into a good epic, you know, you're going to see, like, this Corax is 688 power versus this Caracal, which is 439. Even this, like, the Dramiel is 710 because this Dramiel is actually decked out, right? I've got 3 red stars. I've got everything unlocked. Everything's leveled up to at least level 8. You know, that's more powerful. This is 730. Once again, 3 red stars, everything unlocked. These are even leveled up even more. Level 10 to level 20, or 12 rather. This is 525. 3 red stars, epic, but only the one thing unlocked. Now, why is this in my mainline ships when it's so much weaker than these other ones? Well, that leads into the other piece to all of this, which is a big key to how you build your fleets, which is the formations. Every fleet has to have a formation. We have Assault, Encirclement, Phalanx, Intercept, and Siege. So these are the 4, like the main 4 are Assault, Encirclement, Phalanx, and Intercept. And as we can see, it's like a rock, paper, scissors situation, but with all 4 of them, right? So we have Assault is highly effective against Encirclement. Encirclement is highly effective against Defense. Defense is highly effective against Intercept, and Intercept is highly effective against Assault. Now, one of the problems with this that people have been running into is that, while you're going after level 1 through 3 sites, you can scan it and see what the enemy is and bring a counter. But with a lot of PvE, they stack a bunch of fleets, and the different fleets can have different formations. And in fact, I suspect that they are, for the most part, designed to counter the formation that you're supposed to bring, right? So if you scout out a thing and you see that it's an encirclement, so you bring an assault, chances are they're going to bring an intercept as a second fleet. So that way, if you bring that assault to counter their first fleet, their second fleet counters you. Now, that's not always the case, but just realize that you can't scout anything past the first fleet. So when you're doing PvE past, like, the very, very bare bones, a lot of this fleet formation stuff starts to fall apart. Now, when you're fighting against enemies, like other players, because they can only have the single fleet, like that's when it becomes really, really, really critical to, have, once you can get good information on your enemy and bring the correct weapon to bear, it has a large impact on victory versus failure and how much it costs you, right? Intercept and assault are the two most common formations. That's true. So the fifth one is siege. Siege is different. Siege is only for when you're attacking a structure and you have what's called a siege fleet, right? Siege throws out all of the normal combat mechanics. Siege only happens when all of the normal combat fleets have already been beaten and all that's left is the structure. And so whereas normally there's the whole like phases and turns and fighting and all that stuff, siege just does one hit each time. So we can see here, if I go back to siege mode, if I look at this ship here, this Corax, this is a very, very strong ship. I love it. It's a great fleet, and it's encirclement. So, but if I decide to hit a structure with it, it will only do 150 siege damage each cycle. So every 3 minutes, it's going to cost me 15 stamina, and will do 150 damage to the structure, which is not a lot. Meanwhile, this ship, that bare bones ship that doesn't have any weapons, when it cycles, it's going to do 434 damage to the structure. So almost 2.5 or almost 3 times as much damage as the non-siege fleet. The reason why is because I have a siege specialized ship in the Algos, a siege specialized pilot in Karen Midgeler, and in Thrumgar. All 3 of them are siege, so I get this extra 15% bonus to siege. And then on top of that, in my ship, I have rigs, which rigs are a way to improve your ships. Every ship and every pilot gets 3. And each individual rig improves your ship by a certain amount. Like this one right here increases its firepower by 1.5%, and its energy by 0.5%. This one does energy by almost 1% and hit points by 0.5%. But because I have all 3 of these modules, all 3 of these rigs are siege rigs, then I get a set bonus. So that way this increases my siege damage by 60. This ship is designed to go in after the main fleet goes in. Now this has a couple of major drawbacks. As you can see in this chart, everything is good at siege. You are weak against everything. So no matter who you're going up against, you're going to do 15% less damage to them. They're going to do 15% more damage to you. And to make it worse, when you're sieged, you travel at only half the speed across land. So it's going to take twice as much time for your siege ships to get anywhere. And if your siege ships try to run away, enemy fleets can actually catch up and overcome and blow up your siege ships. So siege ships are very vulnerable, but they're the main hitters against the actual structure itself. And most importantly, the overall strength of the ship itself doesn't really matter, right? The amount of power behind this fleet doesn't really matter, because if I actually have to fight something, I'm just going to lose. This thing is just designed to, I kill everything else and then bring this thing in and it batters them down. If this thing has to defend itself, I'm already dead. And all of the other, like a lot of the other combat mechanics, like capacitor, don't really play into it either. The only thing that really matters is stamina, because you still need to have enough stamina to do each turn. Overall, when it comes to a ship, what you've got is you've got the modules, you have the red stars, and you have its formations. Now you also have its stats, but those are pretty identifiable. You just tap on them to see what they are. You've got the HP, the firepower. Energy is how much energy damage and repair amount it can deal. Data rate is how fast it is. Armor is like a damage mitigation stat. It resists against firepower, more or less, or it reduces incoming damage. And then on top of that, you have your modules, which your modules can unlock, and they can be leveled up. That is effectively your ship. Now, as you can see, in your fleet can have 2 pilots. You have a main pilot, and you have a main commander and a deputy commander. The main commander is important because of their primary stats of offense and tactics. Offense, as you can see, basically increases your commander's talents effects to provide damage bonus while assigned as lead commander. So the offensive stat for the lead commander functions as a buff for the entire fleet. Likewise, the tactic stat functions as a defensive stat for the entire fleet. But then each commander has their own data rate, just like the ship has its own data rate. Likewise, just like ships, pilots have to unlock their skills. Now you can see, like, this skill, to unlock it, requires epic pieces because it's her first unlock. But if I go to his third, you'll see that it requires 40 legendaries to unlock. So in order to unlock a legendary's skills, you will need 40 epic pieces and 40 legendary pieces just to unlock the skills. And then, of course, all of the duplicates to power up the red stars. Now, in this case, the red stars give you... one of the biggest cutoffs for red stars is 3 stars, because it leads to this, which is squad capacity 300 and stamina of 20. That additional stamina means that you can take an additional action before you have to recharge, which is really good. Now, you can see that these stats, like the commander itself, so we can read their abilities. Like her number 1, gain reactive repair for the first 3 turns, 30% to repair your wings. So she plays as reactive repair, which basically means that if you take hits, it automatically triggers a repair. She also does, on her second ability, she removes debuffs from your wings and repairs them. And then for the first 3 turns, reduces your wings receive damage by 11.7%. I think if you're playing for the long run, depending on your pulls, is it worth it to upgrade at least the ship or the stars, the ship modules, because it carries over to the next game? Well, I think that when it comes to ships, I think that it's a lot easier than with pilots. That what you should do is find the 4 or 5 ships that you're going to use, right? You're going to want a ship that can provide at least one of each of the different formations. And the siege ships aren't necessarily as important. Your siege ships can be kind of left behind a little bit. But the key here is that when it comes to your ships, you want to specialize. You can't unlock everything on everything. But the kicker is that while pilots are limited by their stamina, pilots have a certain amount of stamina. Like this guy has 120 stamina. If he had 3 red stars, like this, like her, you would have 140 stamina, because that's what this command matrix does. The point is that this stamina, when you first start out, I think it only takes like 7 or 8 stamina per move. But after the first few days, it's now 15 stamina per action taken. So this is a lot like energy in other games, but the stamina is per pilot. So what that means is that you can go and do a bunch of stuff with a pair of pilots, exhaust them, bring them home, and then swap them out for different pilots in the same ship and send them back out to go do more work. So having a lot of pilots at your disposal is advantageous, because you can do different things with them, you can swap them out, you can put them in training, whatever. But ships don't get exhausted, ships don't get tired, you can keep on using them. So it's worth picking your favorite ships and like specializing them. Now remember, at any given time with these things, you can always reset them. Down here below, there's enhancement reset. This is true about pilots, this is true about ships. So if you want, you can always, like if you've committed into a ship and you don't like what you've committed to, you can always pull out all of the resources that you put into it and put it into a different ship. Don't get nervous about it, like, oh God, I'm gonna put all my stuff into this Algos and then immediately pull a better ship. But the point is that you wanna make sure that the ships that you use are as good as they can be. And ships that you're not using, don't invest in. What carries over to the next season is the ship's unlocks and the ship's stars and stuff. So yes, like if you've unlocked all your weapons and you unlocked all your stars, that is why, honestly, I've focused a lot of my effort and Nova credits into pulling more pilots and ships, because I need the duplicates so I can upgrade the ships, because that's what matters as far as long-term progression. So yeah, like I have been focusing on long-term progression over like instanced progression, this iteration, and that involves prioritizing red stars and unlocks. I think long-term, I need to look at the ship modules, because honestly, those are the most expensive from an ISK perspective. Yes, it's true. Leveling up your modules on your ship is probably the single largest ISK sink in the game right now. The ISK cost to upgrade your modules makes almost every other ISK cost look basically trivial. Like, oh, 3,000 ISK to do this production line. Or 40,000 ISK to bring this up by 1 level. Oh, look, I have to level it up 5 times. So, like, yeah, like, what the fuck is 6,000 ISK when this thing requires 120,000 to level up to the next stage? Only them being unlocked does anything for you at the end of the season. You don't want to pick max upgrade ships, do the rest of the millions. Which, by the way, this means pro tip. One of the questions that I keep on being asked or keep on seeing is, how do you use Nova credits? And it's really hard for me to fully answer that. And even last time I kind of jokingly said, I don't know if leveling, like opening up stuff is the best use of Nova credits. And it's because it's obviously pretty expensive way of using Nova credits at 1,880 Nova credits per 5 pull, right? But that's the permanent upgrades. Most of the efficient ways of using Nova credits, speeding up your construction times, unlocking extra action points, all that stuff. None of that survives through the season. So if you buy things that actually carry over, that costs a lot of Nova credits. But things that do not carry over, things that quote unquote waste Nova credits in the long run, yeah, sure, that's going to be easy. 10 Nova credits here, 30 Nova credits there is going to go a long ways when it comes to like this iteration's progress. Whereas, you know, the 1880 Nova credits that you put in, that's the stuff that's going to stick around and eventually will be what powers you up in the long run. Which one of those you should prioritize at any given time? All I'm going to say is that this game is a snowball game. So little things that increase your production, like if you can use a little bit of Nova credits to level up your headquarters early or level up your refineries early just so you can put in the next level and the next level and the next level, like right now, like that is actually going to do you a lot of good in this iteration. And of course, the better you do during the iteration, the more rewards you unlock over time, which will eventually feed back into unlockables like Nova credits that allow you to like progress in the meta context. So it's a balancing game for sure. I haven't found anything that makes me feel really bad for spending Nova credits on, to be honest. One of the things I do recommend though is that every time you get a chance, once you have your market leveled up, you can go into the market and go into your resource thing and look for good sales. Because, like, you're going to want to use Plex to speed things up anyways. Because things take a long time to wait to level it up. And, like, that time that you're leveling up is time that you're not building something else. So, you know, if you're going to use Plex to speed things up anyways, you're grabbing them at 20% off, 25% off, 50% off when they're in these places, it's worth picking them up. Especially since buying things in the market also progress you on the event track. There's several of these that tell you to go buy stuff from the market. You can use the universal things to promote commanders. The hardest thing to get is red stars. Oh yeah, that does remind me, there is actually a token that you can get. These are usually premium, but you can get them elsewhere too, which are these legendary data chips. These things are gold. You know why? Because these are, I just said, you need red stars in order to make things good. You need to pull extra copies in order to get the stuff in order to upgrade. So what these things do is you can turn these into any legendary blueprint. So that's actually why I have a 2-star men's Repola. This guy, I didn't get 3 men's. I've gotten 2 men's. No, I've gotten 1 men's. I've just thrown every single legendary data chip I have to leveling his stars up because I love him. Those do exist and are worth keeping an eye out for. Those are probably more valuable than gold, to be honest. How do you use the gold chips? Oh, when you go, like, let's say I wanted to level up his stars, right? I go and level up his stars. I go to promote him. Oh, you don't have enough chips. I can hit this plus sign, and that allows me to convert 1-to-1 the things into blueprints. Now, here's the stinker, okay? This conversion is permanent. If I take all of my legendary data chips and I turn them all into men's Repola data sheets, and then I use them to promote men's all the way up, and then later on decide, well, that was a mistake, and I want to wipe him out to reset him, I don't get the legendary data chips back. I get men's Repola data chips because I've converted them over. You don't apply empty data chips, you convert them first. This is the thing that can't be undone in the process. Now, even if I did do that, and let's say I didn't want men's Repola, would I just be stuck? Well, no, I could use those sheets to unlock a legendary module or talent for a different champion, but I wouldn't be able to convert them back into legendary data chips, so that way I could put them into a different legendary to get their red stars up. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind when it comes to that. Theoretically speaking, these exist for epics too, but I don't have any of those. All my epics just say, no, screw you, you don't have them. See, I can tap here and it says insufficient items. That's how to use those. So if we go down here, we can see here a green character has 3 skills, no choices about it. A blue character, 3 skills, no choices about it. An epic has 3 skills, but the 3rd skill has 2 choices based on one of them unlocking when you get 2 red stars. Let's go away from one of the crappiest people in the entire New Eden. He's not a bad pilot, he's just a bad person. Same with him. So we can see, like, let's just look at Amelie first, or Emile, because she's a really good pilot. Let's see why. So her number 1 is a passive. All passives have a trigger chance of 100%. So this thing's always happening. Now, this could be confusing because there can be something else inside of the description that is percentage-based. But the passive is always running. It's just there may be a percentage chance that something actually happens from it. In this case, it always happens. So what happens? Inflict decoder error on a random enemy commander and reduce its armor of enemy wing by 13.1%. Decoder error is a control effect that the attacker has an 80% chance to randomly select a target, friend or foe, while attacking. So, if you've ever gone into your logs, you've ever seen anything where, like, you attacked a bunch of dudes and then you died, or you took a lot more damage than you thought you were going to, you go into your logs and you're like, wait, why is my guys attacking themselves? This is why. A lot of the defense fleets out there right now have Emile as one of the pilots, which means they have decoder error, which means there is a chance of one of your wings. There's a 20% chance that your wing will shoot itself, or will shoot your friendly instead of a hostile. Well, actually, I guess there's a 10% chance, because it's a 20% chance to afflict decoder error, and a 10%, half of that time it'll attack the wrong target. There's the ability, which we just read, and then there's an augmentation. This is the other part that gets people confused. The ability branches out to the augmentation. The augmentation affects the ability. It's not a second ability, okay? Like this one. When neural network attack is initiated, so that's this one, the main thing, 100% chance of inflict repair disabled on a single enemy wing. This puts decoder error on a random enemy wing, and this puts repair disabled on a single enemy wing. I don't know if it's the same wing or not by the wording, but you can see, like, these are 2 separate things, but this is a direct augment to this one, and you have to level them up separately. Then for our level 2, we have deals energy damage to a single enemy wing, so just a normal blap damage to a single target. However, when you augment it, you see when Ion Storm deals damage, 53% chance when maxed leveled to inflict decoder error on an enemy commander for 1 turn. Well, we already learned what decoder error does. So now she's got the basic decoder error that gets put out, and her attack also applies decoder error half the time. So now there's a second chance to get decoder error out there, get it on both the enemy squads or whatever. And then, so then for 3, we come to the choice, right? We could have deals kinetic damage to a single enemy wing with the bonus of when circuit overload deals damage, 80% chance to inflict neural shutdown, a control effect that disables active modules and talents. So in other words, it'll disable all of these right here for the enemy, as well as the modules for the enemy ships, if this hits it for 80% of the time, okay? Now, remember, this circuit overload, because it's an attack, it's an active ability, it has only a 45% chance to trigger. So half the time, this thing will go off, and then when it hits, 80% of the time that it hits, it'll also cause a neural shutdown. So now we have decoder errors going out, decoder errors going out, and neural shutdowns happening. Okay, just tons and tons of CC. You're not going to do anything, and if you do, you might do it to your enemy, or to your own people, rather. Or the other choice is this, which is damage to all enemy wings. When initiating salvo deals damage, additionally reduce damage dealt by the target by 38% when max powered up. So this is just a defensive ability. So rather than trying to do a neural shutdown and shut down their abilities, you're instead trying to shut down their damage. It hits all of the wings instead of just one, and it reduces damage by 38%, which is a big amount. So you could spec towards maximum CC, or you can spec towards more of a defensive measure, where if this goes off, like let's say if you pair up with like a rep guy, like a repair dude, you go with this. Now she's scrambling up the enemy, so that way the enemy is attacking itself sometimes. That's doing some damage. And then she blasts this out and causes them to deal less damage, but I mean, like, that means less damage to you too, while you guys go ahead and kill them. Or you could just stick with maximum CC, right? That's kind of the choice that you have with her. And you only have one relatively simple choice on how to spec her out. Now, for a legendary, it's a little different. For a legendary, we have two sets of choices. One for the second skill, and the second for the third skill. Now, the second skill, much like the epic one, requires 2 red stars to unlock the alternative choice. And as you can see here, it takes 3 red stars to unlock the second choice for the third skill, okay? So once again, we can look at this and see, okay, well, so Men's Repola has a 45% chance to deal kinetic damage to the target after initiating direct fire. Half of the time when he shoots, he basically damages again. 30% of the time when he does that, he also initiates neural shutdown. So he's bringing neural shutdown too, which is that one where it disables their active modules and their talents, okay? 50% of the time when it's his turn, there's a 30% chance of inflicting neural shutdown with that hit. Then, his number 2, I've got 2 choices. 1, it's a passive 100%. Your wings gain a 70% rapid fire and 12.5% HP Nosferatu for your first 3 turns in battle. So what that means is, when Men's Repola is in the team, 70% of the time, he's going to shoot twice instead of once. And there's going to be a 12% when I do damage, I repair based on the damage I get dealt. So I hit twice, and I heal myself with lifesteal off of my hits. In addition to that, because of the augment, it also reduces their armor of both sides by 11.9. So it reduces both sides' ability to deal with damage, while at the same time doing a bunch of damage. So it's kind of a gambit, right? Now remember, I have her paired with Emil. So Emil's disrupting the enemy's efforts. He's disrupting their efforts. So the goal here is that if I can shut you guys down, then lowering both of our armor is fine, because I'm more worried about the damage that's being dealt to you. You're doing reduced damage. So when you do damage to me, I'm not taking as much damage. When you're doing damage to each other, or yourself, you're also doing not as much damage. But when I'm dealing damage to you, I'm doing full damage. That's the difference. So that's the choice there. Now, the other choice I could have gone is with this one. Chance of triggering assassination skills by 15%, which goes up to 30%, plus deals kinetic damage to target after initiating assassination skills by 55%. So what this does is I can forego that whole rapid fire thing. Instead of firing multiple times per turn and life stealing off of it, instead I can increase the chance that I do the extra kinetic damage. So now, instead of firing twice and having a 45% chance of getting it both times, I fire only once, unless something else gives me rapid fire. But that has a 75% chance of doing this extra damage and possibly inflicting neural shutdown, and deals more kinetic damage on top of that, up to an extra 55% of my damage rate. So you've got this that's already doing almost 200% of my damage rate every, now 75%, plus an extra 55% of my damage rate. That's just a ton of damage in one giant shot, basically every single turn. And then for my third choice, or for my third skill, I get the choice between 50% chance to deal kinetic damage to the target after initiating direct fire if the target is already affected by debuffs. Once again, the left talent tree is focused on that rapid fire, right? I have that rapid fire. That rapid fire makes it so I do direct attack more often, which makes it more likely to trigger my assassination, and also likely to trigger my assassination shadow tactics. Now, the target has to already be affected by a debuff. That's true, but I have Emil putting out debuffs, and I have this neural shutdown putting out debuffs. And here we have the bonus thing is increasing the initiation chance. In this tree, I've got 2 shots, and these are independent of each other. So this would give it so that every time I shoot, I have a almost 70% chance of doing extra damage here, and a 45% damage chance to do damage there, unless I took this, in which case it's also a 70% chance to do additional damage. But if I took this, then I didn't take that, so it's only 1 shot instead of 2, etc., etc. My alternative that I could have chosen, if I had 3 red stars, is at max level, 30% chance to deal kinetic damage to all enemy wings after a direct fire. So the big difference there is this is a big hit, a big hit, or these, to single targets, whereas this one hits everybody. So this is the AoE that hits all of the different wings, which usually there's 2 or 3 wings, because you have each pilot is its own wing, and then drones are their own wing. And then this just increases its damage. So this is just raw damage. This side is more control, because it also plays off of control. This requires control to exist in order for this side to work. So this side of things is more control-oriented and about shooting faster. This side of things is more about hitting for just tons and tons of damage in a single shot with bonus damage, right? And you get to choose whichever one you want. You can reset them if you want to. But that's kind of how characters get spec'd. And then you pair these with different guys in order to build up different combos. Like I was saying, like Emil does a lot of disruption, does a lot of debuffs and such. He feeds off of those debuffs and does a lot of damage and makes people attack a lot more. And then the ship that I have them in, well, the first one is deals kinetic damage to a single enemy and increases its received damage by a certain amount for 2 turns. This deals 1 to 2 attacks to a single enemy. So this is making extra direct attacks. Remember, those extra direct attacks are going to trigger everything else. And then the small Nosferatu deals kinetic damage to a single enemy wing and reduces its firepower and data rate by 5% for 2 turns while stackable. So this is suppressing their data rate while shooting a lot of times and hitting them. Combine that with the other 2, and that makes them a pretty decent team. Okay? So that's kind of how the pilots and the ship work together to give you things to do during the fight. Okay? And you kind of evaluate what pilots are good for what ships. It's also worth noting that you can see that in my setup, Amelie is encirclement, Men's is encirclement and intercept, and the Corax is encirclement. So in the end, when I look at my actual fleet, I see I have my 15% bonus for encirclement, I have my bonus for them all being Caldari, and I also get an additional bonus for their personal synergy. If we look at the characters and we look into their bios, we can see that certain guys go together. So in this case, it's Valamo's friends. So Emil and Men's Repola, or Mila or Ortro, if they're together, then they also gain offensive and tactics of commanders by 11 and data rate by 11. So they're going to hit a little bit harder, take a little bit less damage, and go a little bit sooner in the turn. The way data rate works is, unlike Raid, where it's like if you've got a lot of speed, you can go multiple times in a single turn, it's closer to like initiative order of the turn, okay? The person with the highest data rate wins. However, there are 2 other abilities that are worth taking into consideration. There is quick response and delayed response. And if you want to think about it this way, the turn functions as like 3 different turns. There's quick response phase, where everybody with quick response gets to go based on their relative data rate with each other. So if there's only one person with quick response, congratulations, he goes first. If there are two people with quick response, they go, like, the one with the highest data rate goes first, the second one goes second, and then everybody else goes in the next phase. Then there's the normal phase, where everybody who doesn't have a quick response or delayed response gets to go based on their data rate. Now, obviously, they go after everybody with quick response, and they go before everyone with delayed response. But internal to themselves, it's based on their data rate. Likewise, then everybody with delayed response gets to go. So if you're delayed response, if you're the only person with delayed response, congratulations, you go last. If you have multiple people with delayed response, then they go in the order that they have data rate, but after everybody else. That's how that plays out. Okay, so you've got your ship. You've got your pilot. How does this actually lead to power? Well, as your pilot levels up, your pilot gets what's called squad capacity. If we actually go to configure here, and I go to swap out this pilot, you can see all of my pilots. And you can see I've got level and I've got squad capacity. If I sort by squad capacity, you can see for the most part, my highest level people also have the highest squad capacity. Squad capacity goes up as you level, blah, blah, blah. Squad capacity is the secret to power in Eve Galaxy Conquest. Because the point here is that this ship stat here, like that 525, is per squad, right? That's why it says ships per squad. All this stuff is per squad. So if this pilot, if Karen Midgeler can have 10,300 squads, well, that's a lot of power, right? That's more than if you can have 3,000 squads. That's for sure. So that's how the overall power goes. And that's what you're refilling at the bottom here, right? So Karen Midgeler has 10,000 squads. Frumgar here has 10,000 squads. So my grand total is 20,000 squads. Now I'm at half power. So you can see that, like, my bar isn't full, and I need to refill it by refueling it with components, which are built in your base, or you can repair people without components, but with just the raw resources of ore, ice, and gas in any sort of outpost or structure that you put them in. But if you're doing it in your main base, you can just rearm them with components right away. Poof, they're back in action, and that affects their power. So, like, if I come here to... Oh, my Dremule's at max power. So we can see here that, like, with 22,300, the Dramule has 700 power, 22,000 of them. I have 459,000 power. Now, it's going to be a little bit higher than the direct math because the pilots themselves add their own power to the point, but that's kind of how to understand the whole thing. And then when I go into fight, I can lose squads by taking damage, and that's what needs to be repaired. So the pilot, the ship itself brings the power. The pilots bring the squads, and the squads magnify the power to give you your total fleet power. And each pilot controls their own wing. So when you see wing, you mean like one, basically, when you see a wing, think a half to a third of the fleet. A fleet is the fleet, and squads are individual components that are basically just a number to us. And that's how to understand kind of how to build your fleet a little bit more. There are some good combinations in the guide at the bottom left of the ship section. And there are some pretty decent explanations as to why some of these are good. I have actually found some of them sort of confusing too, but you can find some combinations, and it also will often, like, it'll give you alternatives sometimes. Like this one says you can use Yun instead of Karen Midgeler. But the basic one is this setup, which is kind of what the game gives you, which is kind of a trap, but that's probably a topic for another day. So hopefully all of those will get you started in being able to build your own fleets for Eve Galaxy Conquest. Let me know what topic you want me to tackle next. Hopefully this was valuable to you. Let me know if I missed anything or if you have any other guides, tips. I didn't want to do like a straight up tier list. I want to do that later. The other problem is that tier lists, especially this early in the game, things are shifting around. So the relative power of any given thing might not be the way it is in a month, and that would suck. So this is how to actually interpret what you're looking at to make good choices and have fun building your fleets in Eve Galaxy Conquest. Like I said, I'll have the link to the Notion, which has my resources, including all of the different keywords, down below. But yeah, please let me know what you think, and is this guide useful to you, etc., etc. But thank you guys for coming. I've been Ash Rothby. I've been playing this. Well, I've been playing this game for only a month, but I've been playing EVE Online since 2010 and talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put EVE into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for checking it out, liking the channel, and actually sharing around this video. I know that there isn't a lot of EVE Galaxy Conquest content out right now. I hope to help fill that hole a little bit, and I do appreciate those of you who have been checking out my channel, looking for some EVE Galaxy Conquest stuff, and checked out my previous live stream. It was more of a let's play than focused stuff. We want to do more focused guides. Let me know what kind of things, what sort of questions that you have and topics that we can cover. Yes, just like in EVE Online, there is no best fleet. There's only best for the current situation. But with all that, I've been Ash Rothby, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. Woo!